friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Yeti or Not, Over the Mountain borders, and a little ornament from Joy to the Woods. So I've stamped out my images on two separate panels of Neenah Solar White, and I've used Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. For the Yeti skin, I'm using BG quadruple 0, BG triple 0, and BG 02. I always like to color my Yeti's skin in blue because it reminds me of the abominable snowman from Rudolph, which is one of my absolute favorite Christmas movies. So I started with B02 and gave a little shadow around the edges of his face and on the bottom of his hands and horns. And then I'm blending that out with the BG triple 0. And then I'll bring in the BG quadruple 0 to make the center of his face nice and light and give him a highlight on his hands and horns. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to take these shades and do the tops of the snow-capped mountains. So I started with the BG quadruple 0. I wasn't sure how dark I wanted them to go, but I ended up switching to the BG triple 0 and just doing a little bit of coloring there. And then I'm going to blend it out with that BG quad. And I didn't bother to color in the last mountain because I knew that was going to get cut off in the final scene. I used R20 to give my Yeti some rosy cheeks since he's out in the freezing cold temperatures, and it also just helps him look a little extra jolly, and I went over the edges of that with the BG quad again. For his fur, I wanted to pick a creamy tone rather than what I would normally reach for, which would be like a warm gray, but I thought the creamy tone would just give him a little bit of extra fun and also match with my pattern paper. So I used E50 for that, and I also colored in the tree trunks for my little Christmas trees and the top of the little ornament. I also decided to do something really different for my trees. Rather than reaching for a green, I decided to color them pink, and I picked R11, R12, and R20 for that. My idea was that I wanted all of my colors to be inspired by like the new year dawning. So I wanted like this cold but really pretty pastel color palette. So that's why I decided to go with the pinks. And I really like how it turned out. I think it was just something really different. So I used the R20 as my darkest, and I put a little shadow up under each of the little sections and blended out with the R12. And then the R11 was my highlight shade. For the little ornament, I'm coloring that in W00, W1, and W3. Sorry, my camera went a little bit out of focus there. My idea is that this is the New Year's Eve ball, and it just looks really small because the Yeti is so big. You can see how large he is compared to those trees. I'm also going to use these shades to color in my mountains, so I just switch panels and I'm using the W3 as that darkest shade and making sure to put a little extra shadow on the two mountains that are kind of pushed back, the smaller two. And then I'm going to grab that W1 and start to blend that out and just kind of blending up toward that snow-capped mountain top on each one of those. And then I'm going to grab the W00 and finish them off. And I did go back with a second layer as well because the coloring wasn't very smooth. So I just wanted to kind of make that less streaky. And that is most likely due to the fact that my markers are running really dry after this holiday card series. So I need to do some marker maintenance big time. And if you're not sure how to clean and refill your markers, I do have a video tutorial on that, which I will link in the cards. But back to the story, my idea was that the Yeti spotted the New Year's Eve ball and thought it was so pretty and sparkly, and so he kind of just made off with it and has taken it back to his little mountain lair at the North Pole. So I will be adding a bit of glitter to that later on and making sure that it, looks nice and sparkly like the New Year's Eve ball. So when I was coloring in my snow-capped mountains, I forgot to do the edge of the snowbank, so I just went back to my BG triple 0 and then my BG quadruple 0 to add a little bit of a frosty glow to that. and then I use my colorless blender to smooth that into the white. And now I can trim all of these images out with their coordinating dies. So for my focal panel, I have taken one of the Lawn Fawn Stitch Circle Stackables and die cut that out of a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock. And I'm going to blend on a sunrise sky using some Distress Oxide inks. I'm using spun sugar first. I wanted there to be a nice soft pink glow on the sky, as I figured he made off with that New Year's ball, you know, right after the countdown, and now that he's making it back to his little mountain lair, you know, it's already New Year's morning by now. So now I'm taking some speckled egg and I'm going to blend that on the top and a little bit down the sides. I still want that pink to be predominant. I am going to go back to that spun sugar and blend on a little extra color and push that speckled egg back a bit because I want there to be a nice fade from shade to shade. Then I'm taking some liquid stardust and I'm going to squirt some of that out onto a small acrylic block. I just feel like I get a little bit more control if I kind of flick it off of a block like this with a small paintbrush, as I really want a small splatter. So I went ahead and did that, and then I'm also going to add some Copic opaque white. So these can be the stars coming out, you know, kind of heralding the new day. So I added a little bit of water to that, and then I'm going to flick that all over the surface as well. And then I'll set this panel aside to dry completely. And in the meantime, I'm going to work on my pattern papers. I'm using some from the Let It Shine 6x6. And this cream print with the gold foil polka dot is the one that I was trying to match the Yeti's fur to. And then I also pulled out this aqua and white stripe. And I didn't show it on screen, but later I do pull out a pink pattern as well to pull in that pink background and the pink trees. So now I'm working on my sentiment and I'm stamping out "Have a Really Cool New Year" from Yeti or Not. I'm stamping that in Manatee ink, which is the lighter of the two grays that I own. Like I said, I wanted to keep everything really soft. I did stamp it down 3 times though to get a nice impression, because that ink does dry back a bit and I wanted it to show up. And then on the inside of the card, I decided to switch to mermaid ink just so it would have more of that kind of frosty feel to it. And I stamped out the other Yeti and a tree and a heart, and the best is Yeti to come. I've trimmed down my pattern papers. I used the scallop circle stackables for the aqua and white print. I used the Stitch Party Banner die to selectively die cut the bottom of this pink and white polka dot. And then I use the outside in Stitch Rectangle Stackables for that cream print with the gold foil polka dot. So I'm going to adhere that piece down to my card base, which is a piece of speckled eggshell cardstock from Lawn Fawn. I just thought it looked nice and cozy, similar to the Yeti's fur. So that is going to just show a small border on the outside edge. And then I'm going to take this flag banner and run that down the center of my card. And then I've got that aqua and white stripe, so I'm going to adhere that right over top, a little bit high of center on the card. And I just used my favorite Tombow Mono multi-glue to adhere all of that. And I'm just making sure that I have my stripes going the way that I want them, and that I have the piece centered on the card. And now I've got my little panels, and I'm going to attach the snowbank to the sky piece that I colored with the Distress Oxides. So now you can see that beautiful sunrise that's behind the mountains. I've added some foam tape to the back of that panel to give it a bit of lift on the card, and I'm going to pop that up right over top of the aqua and white stripe piece. Next, I'm going to take the Yeti and I'm going to add him kind of overlapping some of those mountains, just so you can kind of get the idea about how big he is in the scene. You know, it just kind of adds some scale to the surrounding images. Then I'll take the 2 pink trees and I'm going to add those over on the right hand side to kind of balance him out. So I added the taller one first, and then the shorter one will go towards the very right side of the card. And then I'll take my little New Year's Eve ball and add that in his hand. And I got a little too much glue on the back of that, so I just wiped some off with my finger and then made sure I had my placement just right. Then I'll grab my sentiment, which I trimmed down with one of the everyday sentiment banners. And I'm just trying to figure out where exactly I want that on the card. I also did add some foam tape to the back so it would be lifted up to the same level as the focal panel. So once I'm happy with that, I'll press that down into place. And then of course I have to add a little bit of my favorite Stardust Stickles. So I'm going to add that to all of the snow-capped mountains just on the bottom edge of that. And I put it on the Christmas trees as well because you need lots of sparkle for the new year. And I ended up putting it on the top edge of that snowbank as well. And then for my New Year's Eve ball, I grabbed another bottle of Stickles in the shade Mercury Glass, which is kind of between a gold and a silver. And I added that to cover most of the ball because I wanted there to be a lot of glitter. And because there wasn't quite enough sparkle even still, I decided to add a few sparkling clear sequins. So I used the mix pack that has a bunch of different sizes, and I'm just dipping those in a bit of Ranger Multimedia Matte and then adding that to my card front. This glue sticks really well going through the mail for little sequins and things like this. So I'm just dipping them in and then setting them down with my embellishment wand. I also added a sprinkle of tiny iridescent stars that I didn't realize my camera wasn't recording for, and then I filled in the centers of the sequins with that Mercury Glass Stickles. So I'm going to lift that up to the camera so you can see how it catches the light when you tip it. There is lots and lots of sparkle on this card, but I think it's appropriate. We need a, much better sparkly new year. So there's another peek at the inside, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I will have one more for you on Wednesday before the end of the new year. In the meantime, I hope you all are enjoying your holiday season. If you're interested in any of the products I used today, you'll find those listed and linked below the video in the description bar. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.